Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a fun show for you today. We'll be recapping USC's spring showcase that happened on Saturday. Some of you guys may have saw it either in person or on the Pac-12 network. We'll discuss that and our takeaways from that day. We talked to Graham Harrell, USC's offensive coordinator, yesterday on Tuesday about the quarterbacks and where they stand in the quarterback battle. He had some interesting things to say, so we'll talk about that. He also told us more of a better picture of his timeline for when he's going to name a starter. Then we're going to talk about USC's defense. You know, they're kind of under the radar right now as far as maybe some problems that they're having on depth issues and youth. What will that look like come fall? We'll talk about that. And as usual on Tunnel Vision, we want to hear from you guys. So make sure you call in 512-4-TUNNEL. That's our live number where we're taking live calls. Chris Trevino is standing by, ready to screen your calls as usual. You can also tweet at us, hashtag Tunnel Vision. If you just put the tweet and put your question, comment, and hashtag Tunnel Vision, I'll see it, and I can put it on the screen. And whatever platform you are watching this on, whether it is Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook Live, we can put your comment or question on the screen, answer it, talk about it, have a little banter about it. You know how we do. But that's what the show looks like for today. But guys, Ryan, Shotgun, you both were at the Spring Showcase on Saturday. What were your guys' takeaway from it?
Hey, Keely. Yeah,
Hello.
good recap to start us in
Thank
where
you.
we're going.
Thank you.
All the different ways to get a hold of us. Make sure you call in. We got a lot of calls last week very late. So we want to get them in. Get your calls in early, which is good. We love the phone calls.
We do.
It wasn't a scrimmage. It was a practice. But I thought it was run a lot better than what we saw last year. Just spring in general. There's some people that were watching it in person, like you said. Some people watched on the Pac-12 network. The main Pac-12 network, you got the first hour, which was a lot of stretching. The second, if you were in the LA one, you got to see the second hour. Or you're like Shotgun and you watch in person and on the Pac-12 network at the same time. And we got to see Yogi Roth running around interviewing people and stuff. But no, I thought it was all right. I mean, I would much rather see, we talked about this before, I would love to see the Trojan Huddle come back and be a real spring game. We're going to give them a pass this year. You know, there's no Coliseum and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they could have went somewhere else. But next year, I do want to see it come back. But for what they were trying to do, I thought it was pretty effective. You got a few highlight plays, like a marquee step with that 60-yard touchdown run down the right sideline where you see all 230 pounds of them just beating people to the sideline, and then all the way, no one ever was able to catch him, which maybe, like Keely said at the beginning, a little concern for the defense. But it was really nice to see him perform well. I thought he's had a good spring. And then, Drake Jackson, who, big number 99 out there with a one-handed pick six that everyone was talking about. His family was sitting like probably 3 rows up. They all had number 99 T-shirts on and stuff. So it was really cool to see them cheering and stuff. I should have took a picture of that because it was kind of neat. But the crowd really loved Drake Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, on the way out, the conversation was more about Drake Jackson, and the buzz when leaving the stadium was about Drake Jackson rather than the offense. And the showcase was built more to be about the offense, I think. They obviously aren't going to unveil everything, but also Clay Helton said afterwards, it's like, we would let anybody in here to watch it, just as long as you I don't want to get into that, but I'm going to try not to get upset, be spicy as
we made it 5 minutes in before the spice factor happened.
But he said they would let anybody in to watch it. Basically, they wanted people to see the offense and see what it can do. They were not showing everything, but it's a pretty basic offense, and that's what we've been talking about all spring, is that they were able to install it in 3 practices, and then they've just been building on the same route concepts over and over again, basically. So it's about repetition and getting it going that way. But the buzz coming out of it was Drake Jackson and his incredible one-handed interception, and even the play happened. Jack Sears tried to throw a screen pass to his right. There was pressure coming up the middle, so he had to throw it really quickly, a wide receiver screen pass. It looked like he had an opening. I watched the replay a couple times. There's an opening there, except that Drake Jackson is more athletic of a lineman than you expect.
Yeah.
And he sticks his paw out there and just one-hands it on a lower throw. It's a terrific play. But the drive continues. They run a couple more plays with Jack Sears, and they switch quarterbacks. When Jack Sears is on his way to the sideline, He's like pantomiming the play and then going, "Did you see that?" to the other quarterbacks because he couldn't believe it. It was an incredible play and shows you the type of athleticism he has. And we'll see if USC can find a way to get him on the field so that he can be a playmaker like that. And when you're drawing comparisons to Leonard Williams and Rasheem Green from multiple coaches as a freshman, it's usually a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
Good sign indeed. Now, just based off of some of the Twitter comments I've seen, the peristyle, of course, it seems like some people weren't as impressed with the spring showcase. I don't know what they were expecting or their expectations. How do you parse out the reaction USC has gotten kind of from the fans versus what we saw on the field? What can you really take away? I know Shotgun's opinion of the showcase is it really was just another practice for USC.
Yeah, basically.
What do you take away from that? How much stock should be put into a day like that?
It's just another practice that was being televised, basically. It wasn't much different. They did cut out a little bit of the special teams and stuff, kind of the early stuff, and weren't as many, one-on-one stuff. There was a little bit more team stuff. But it's just similar to a normal Saturday practice where they have a more scrimmage emphasis. They did some tackling in the showcase, but it wasn't like it was a full-out game or anything.
Right.
So they're not going to show a lot of stuff. So there's not a lot to take away from it, I don't think, besides just looking at individuals and how they're playing and how the tempo has changed. You could see it. Hopefully you can see it on the broadcast. You could see that they were going from drill to drill quicker, that they were getting, they would run 4 plays with one quarterback to get another group in there. And that the tempo was, more continuous with this offense and what they've been doing this spring than it was in past. So maybe that's what you can take away from it rather than looking at the individual plays and saying the defense didn't play great or the offense didn't do this or they didn't run the ball or whatever your takeaways, those big picture takeaways. I just don't think you can really sense that from one individual practice because that's all that this should be really looked at as.
Yeah, there's been, like Keely said, there's been some negative comments on Twitter on the peristyle. We're seeing some on Periscope. OC Sneakerhead is like it was a scripted practice, just a spring practice. That's whack. Some people didn't really like it, but the people that came in person, maybe they just understood what was going to be better. It seemed like people had a good time. Now it wasn't this enormous deal. I think they had maybe one little concession thing there. There was a couple thousand people, right? So it was like, or something. I don't know how many.
USC estimated around 1,000 people.
Oh, 1,000. Okay, so 1,000 people. But it was, the stands looked pretty full, and that was a pretty good turnout. Seemed like people had a good time with it. Players were coming up and talking to their families and stuff afterwards. And then same thing with Swim with Mike was going on across the way. So a lot of the players went over there, and I got to check that out. And I thought, for what they were trying to do, I thought it was fine. Like you said, it was just a regular practice. They did do, more tackling, and I thought it was more physical than a lot of the practices we saw last spring and even in the fall. So there was that, but it definitely didn't have that kind of game element. And I think before they were trying to pretend it was more like a game and get like Cardinal versus White and did points, but it really wasn't. It wasn't much of a game. Now they've just kind of got away from that altogether. Hopefully, though, they go back to it next year. There should be a pretty full roster in the spring. They're only going to lose like 8 or 9 seniors, but with maybe some attrition and stuff. But
I mean, you thought that last year, though.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they should. They're back. The depth is back. Finally back from sanctions. Like they're back to 85 roster spots, and then suddenly you go in the spring and you got 5 wide receivers. You got 5 DBs. You got offensive line where they on Saturday they had Liam Jimmons, converted defensive tackle, and Frank Martin, who has not played a snap of offense, as the 2 starting tackles.
Right.
Because Austin Jackson was away and Jalen McKenzie was out with an elbow injury. Both those guys are back this week. Should note that. But Clayton Brantley also out with a back injury. So, just there's certain positions they've had some really bad depth at. So they're trying to counteract that with the DBs, bringing in a bunch of guys in this class. Most of them will get here in the fall, so they should have more numbers then. The wide receivers, you have several transfers leave that group where it should have been a deeper group coming into the season, especially when you go, okay, well, Michael Pittman and Tyler Vaughn's 2 guys that theoretically could have left school, came back, your 2 starting receivers, you should have a deep roster there. No. So it's pretty thin. So, that's the question is USC going to get back to the point where, it's deep enough and it's talented enough, those 2 deep, that 3 or 4 deep, that you're getting guys out there and you're like, oh, man, I haven't seen that guy. You haven't seen Victor Blackwell in a while and suddenly has a really big spring game. Or you don't see those guys and, I forgot about that guy. I'm excited about him again now. And that's what the spring game can do for players. and get their name back in the conversation a little bit for the fans, but it just hasn't been that way because they haven't had the depth. They've been scared to an extent to risk an injury, and it's been partly because you always have some off-season surgeries and stuff, and they've kind of been in particular positions the last couple of years, and they'll be okay. We only have one safety left, so
Right.
A couple of years ago it was we can't run a full two-man deep, so we're just going to do this showcase thing. We'll go offense against defense to an extent, but so you would hope they would get back to a full game. It's much more of a fun atmosphere, and it's much better for the players because it's a true kind of a warm-up game.
Yeah.
And you get to see which players are going to step up when there's fans in attendance, and who's a practice player versus who's a guy that when the lights are on, he's the guy that's going to show up.
Yeah, I think transfer portal certainly hurt. With two areas, defensive back depth and wide receiver depth. We'll see, and see what's going to. There's going to be a lot of change next year. The Coliseum will be renovated. Will they want to do something in there to kind of get the fans out again? But I really enjoyed the old Trojan huddle and in and out trucks from back in the day, and just have people come out there. And you're not going to get 80,000 people like you do other places, but it was a really fun day for people. So hopefully they get back to that.
Yeah, it's not Nebraska. I mean, if you have it at Loker every year at Cromwell, then it'll be packed.
Yeah,
and it'll look like
1,000
it's
people.
a lot of people there. And you could have the surrounding gates and stuff. You could have like 4,000 people there.
Yeah.
It would look like there's a lot of people compared to Nebraska, where there's 50,000 people that show up, or 60,000.
The list of activities in Southern California versus Nebraska are a little different, but
well, also like having it in the Coliseum, like when they did have previous years when they had full games, you have the bouncy house out there for the kids, and
True.
it draws in more fans. You have the signings afterwards, and your young fans then grow up liking the players, whereas that wasn't really the case this game. There wasn't like an autograph session afterwards. There wasn't much for kids, to kind of build that rapport there. And I think part of it is that you're on, you're coming off a 5-7 season.
Yeah.
yeah, winning brings out people. So we actually have a lot of calls right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm
Okay.
going to go to our first caller, Junior in San Fran, who's transferring over. Hello, Junior.
Hello.
Hi, what's your question for the team?
So basically, just wanted to know who's projected to start on defense. Because I think Pele and Hufanga and Solo, that would make a killer defense just right there with those three. But just in general, like who's projected to start right now? Because now nobody's really talking about the defense, mainly just the offense.
Good question.
Yeah. Is it Junior? Is that Junior, right?
Yep.
Yes.
That's the name.
Thanks, Junior.
Thanks for the call.
You've been listening to the show for a while? Like, is this you new?
Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about people.
Yeah, here off and on because I have a newborn, so it's kind of hard to get on.
Congratulations. Well, it's great. Well, thanks for being
Thank you.
our first caller tonight.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, projected starter. So, some moves early. We thought John Houston was going to start at middle linebacker, right? He hasn't been getting.
Well, you thought he was going to be the will linebacker because that's where he's been for the last 2 years. He's switched over to the Mike position, but the last couple of practices, the last week or so, he's been running with the second team. So I don't know if that's just an opportunity to get Palia Naitiote and Jordan Iosefa time together or exactly what it is, but that's an interesting thing that we'll be asking Clancy about tomorrow. He's in the mix. In the middle, your middle linebackers will start in the middle of the defense.
The inside guys,
Yeah, those guys, you're going to have John Houston. Jordan Iosefa is going to play somewhere. Don't know exactly where, but he'll be in there. They have a lot of confidence in him. Palia Naitiote. On the line, you got Christian Rector, Jay Tufele, Brandon Peely, Marlon Tuipulotu. Those guys will be in the mix there somewhere. You're going to have some edge rushers, but it depends on how they try to use the edge rushers as to who they'll be there. There's some different guys, so I don't know if you can really name a starter there.
Yeah, but like a Connor Murphy or a Drake Jackson, I think are going to they'll be in the rotation.
Hunter Echols, I think, is a guy that'll be used for some certain things. The question marks are really that back five. What are they going to do with the DBs? Because you basically lost everybody.
Right.
Now, Talanoa Hufanga, Isaiah Polamau, Greg Johnson, those guys have started some games in the past. Those would probably be your front runners. Chase Williams, I guess, has started one game as well. That would be.
He'll probably be your nickel guy.
Yeah, he's going to be the nickel more than likely. I would say Greg Johnson, Isaac Taylor Stewart, and Elijah Griffin are your three front runners for the cornerback spots. But I was talking about this in the Family Feud podcast earlier with Keely. No one's really distinguished themselves as I'm a starter. you guys figure out the other side of the field. I'm going to be this guy. It's just there's no one. It's kind of like the quarterback situation last year where Fink and Sears had an opportunity to push themselves in the front and say, going in the fall, I'm the guy. You other people have to beat me. That hasn't really happened with the cornerbacks. So so I'm curious to see how that plays out. At the safety position, you expect Hufanga to be in the starting lineup, probably pull him out as well. But we'll see. Britton Allen's a guy who was playing corner early in early in spring. He's now moved back to safety. We'll see how he develops at that position. C.J. Pollard, who has not played this spring. So it's just guys that aren't out there right now. So it's hard to tell that back five who's actually going to be the starters there.
Yeah, it would be good to have seen Pollard this spring. But, we've seen like a Dominic Davis. He's performed pretty well. He scored a touchdown in the spring showcase. Maybe that helps him a little bit. But, a guy like Pollard, you kind of forget about him every once in a while. But if he was around this spring, he'd be getting so many reps. It would be a huge deal. And it's just, unfortunately for him, he's a really nice kid. So hopefully he gets healthy and he's in the mix too. Once fall comes around, it should be a much deeper group. You get the guys back from injuries. You get a whole bunch of new people coming in. But right now, it's a mash unit.
And that's something, to talk about what we had at the top of the show, and Chuck and I talked about this in our podcast, is that I feel like, as Junior said, there's a lot of emphasis on the offense so far this spring, not a lot of deep talking about the defense. And I think a lot of that is because, like you said, Ryan, there are moving pieces in the defense and kind of a wait and see attitude because there'll be more bodies coming in the fall. But does the moving pieces really translate into stability once fall comes? Is that just because there's new bodies, is that going to be better? Is this still going to be a depth issue, experience issue still in fall?
Yeah, I think the depth is going to be okay, but there's been talk, and we've seen the change on the offensive side of the ball. It's very different than what we've seen before. There's been talk, and we've seen some change on the defensive side, but will they rotate more guys in? Is it going to be more efficient and simpler defense like everyone has been saying? It's hard to tell right now. It's because of some of the depth stuff, but I think once we see the games roll around, does the defense look different or does it look kind of the same? Was there just talk? It's hard to say. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces with the defense right now. We're pretty sure that the offense, even if you're short on depth in a couple spots, that's going to be good. I think some of the questions right now are on the defensive side of the ball, and people have that UCLA game memory, etched in their minds, 300 yards rushing and all that kind of stuff. So I think they did need to make some changes. They've talked about it, but I don't know if we've seen, it hasn't been as tangible, I guess.
I would say that the defense has been good against the run in the spring. So the question becomes, is that because the offensive line is inexperienced and because the USC offense, we don't know if they can run the ball, or is it because you got a really good deep defensive line with Pele, Tui Pelotu, Tufele, Jacob Lichtenstein, Christian Rector. There's a lot of guys there that they have confidence in and trust to be in that mix. And then your middle linebackers are really, really deep right now.
Yeah.
With Palaie and Itiote, the switch there with John Houston, but also Jordan Iosefa and Kanai Mauga and Juliana Falanico all moving to the interior.
Yeah. Where are they all going to fit in? There's
exactly,
a lot of depth in the front seven, unlike the back five.
Yeah, so the front six guys there, the middle six guys, I would say, and then the question marks are around them. The back end of the defense, we don't really know, and part of it is because we can't really see everybody out there this spring.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Junior, for the call. And Chuck, and you talked about, does that mean the defensive line is good? Does that mean the offensive line is struggling? That's kind of the question of spring when you see USC go against itself so much. What does that mean? And we have a call from Brian in Irvine who kind of touches on that. So let's go to him. Brian, hello.
Hi. How's
Hi.
everybody doing?
Good. What's your question for the team?
Really simple. Fan of the show. Thank you very much. I'd like to know which side of the ball do you think did better during the spring? And I'd like to hear from all three of you, and what your opinions are as far as which side shined most.
Thanks, Brian. Good question. I would go with the offense.
There's a lot more talk about the offense. Yeah. You're paying attention to it more because it's new, I think. And that was kind of the question that Keely and I debated, is that the defense is playing bad, or you're just not noticing them because everyone's paying attention to the offense. I think it's more of that. I think people are just paying attention to the offense. It's new, trying to see how this is going to fit, how individual players fit in it, versus the defense is, the front of the defense. You know those guys. You've seen them for multiple years. You trust those middle linebackers that are going to be solid. And then you got question marks around the DBs, but you can't really answer them now.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how much do you pay attention to the fact that, Jordan McMillan's getting a ton of reps as a walk-on, and some of the other cornerbacks are walk-ons. They're getting a lot of reps. And, if John Jackson beats those guys, you're really excited about John Jackson, or you just kind of look at it and say, that's a freshman beating a walk-on, so you can't get too excited on that rather than blaming the defense and saying the defense isn't making plays. I think it's more of that. I think you know what you're getting in the center of that defense, and there's question marks around the outside, but you can't really answer them now because of the injuries, the depth issues, and the fact there's so many bodies coming in the fall that may change everything.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, it's not like you're focusing on the defense and can make big judgments about them right now, I think.
And it's hard for me because I think you look at the defense and losing some veterans for sure, but scheme-wise, it's going to be pretty similar. We talked about the depth and things like that, but you kind of know what you have there. It's going to be somewhat similar to what you've seen the last couple of years. The offense has completely changed. And if you think back to last spring, if you had a scrimmage or a showcase where your starting left tackles were Frank Martin, a guy that never plays, and a guy that played on defense the day before, Liam Jimmons, and it looked fine. Like, it didn't look like it was, there was a huge problem.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a huge problem in years past. So for me, I think there's improvements on the offensive scheme, even though I don't think it's going to be as talented of an offense, especially on the offensive line in the last couple of years. I think the scheme is just going to trump everything. It's going to be so much better. So I think the defense can be good. I mean, I once the depth from the secondary comes in there, if Clancy puts it all together, I think it can be something really special. But I'm seeing it more on the offensive side. So for Brian, I'd go with the offense.
Interesting. I mean, it's the age-old question of when you get into fall camp or spring camp, when you're just seeing the team go against each other so much, is how much can you contribute to each other? I think I don't want to break it down side by side. I think I might want to say if you put offensive line versus defensive line, I'm going to pick defensive line just because of the experience and just from what we've seen. DBs and wide receivers, I would probably give that to wide receivers because more experience, they're more skilled in that position, and the DBs are just so ravaged as far as depth goes. Linebackers, can't really say that just because they're moving around so much. You can't. It's kind of TBD right now. Quarterbacks, you've heard us talk about them ad nauseum, so you kind of get a feel for that. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to say who's won each side because I don't think you can really come away with that in this spring. So
Fair. All right. Thanks, Brian, for the good question.
Thanks, Brian, for the call. We have one last caller who has a separate question, but let's take him because he's been waiting for 20 minutes. We have Bob from Huntington Beach on the line, if he will switch over. Hello, Bob. You're on the line.
Hey, thank you very much for letting me be able to talk here.
Of course.
I'm really impressed with your show. I've enjoyed your show the last couple of years, and I kind of got into you and all the other reporters there because I'm good friends with JT and Almost St. Brown, and my son went to Modern Day and everything. But my question is, and I know you got a lot of callers and so forth, but, we've been talking all spring long, with all the coaching. We got all the coaching now in place. I'm happy with Graham Hill. But it seems like with all the discussion, no one thought about in the backyard with Coach Bruce Rawlings over at Modern Day. Why not get him to be a future coach or become one of the coaches there, because he's produced some great teams and he's produced a lot of talent. I mean, he got Matt Leinart at USC and he's a former USC football player too.
Yeah.
I know that's not important, but I just wondered why no one's ever thought about Bruce Rawlings.
I would be very surprised if he has not been approached previously by someone whether it's at a lower position or by a USC to come on as an, now the position would be offensive analyst and work his way up type of thing. I think he is, he's been set in that position for so long at Modern Day that I think that he's probably been approached because of how much talent they have produced there previously, that he's turned it down or it hasn't been the right offer or something. I don't think that you would offer him, if you're a USC or a Power 5 program, you're not going to offer him the head coaching position. Now, maybe if he went to San Diego State or like UNLV did, bringing Tony Sanchez, I believe his name is, from Bishop Gorman, and then if he had success at a Mountain West school, then he could work his way up to a Pac-12 or a Power 5 school. But it's not usual that a Power 5 school will hire a high school coach. It's very rare. I mean, you see a guy like Gus Malzahn, was a high school coach, worked his way up, I believe, at Arkansas State,
Yeah.
and then ended
I
up
think it
getting
was, yeah.
and then getting the Auburn job and has success and stuff like that. But it's very, very rare for a high school coach to, even with as much success as Bruce Rollins has had, Rollinson has had there at Mater Dei. But you do know that he can recruit. Because Mater Dei has brought in so many good transfers recently, and because of the open transfer rules now, it's allowed to be said that, yes, he can recruit there at Mater Dei, and they've done a great job of producing talent the last few years after having a long, long drought of not being able to get to the CIF championship and win that state championship. To win it last year shows what they've been able to do, and they reloaded. I mean, a guy like Bryce Young being there after having JT Daniels, and they've got a ton of talent there. We'll be seeing several of their games this year because USC will be down there recruiting as well.
Yeah, Bob, great question. And I think some of the guys that you'd mentioned that were hired, like the Tony Sanchez, but I think there was an age factor there. He's been there a long time. He's been so established. I don't know how many years he's been there. I would guess with Shotgun, I haven't talked to the guy in a couple of years, but I would guess with Shotgun, like what Shotgun was saying, he's probably been approached about something, and it might be where he's done. He doesn't want to be the head coach at Mater Dei anymore, and he could come in and be some kind of analyst or whatever at USC potentially. I mean, I think, you would think that the coaching staff would be open to doing something like that. It's hard to say, but I don't know of anyone that's approached him, but I'm assuming people have over the years. But it's not like he's this up-and-coming coach. He's been doing it for so long. I think it'd be harder for him to leave. And, from what I've heard, he's pretty happy with what he's doing, too.
Usually it takes a younger coach to make that jump, too. A guy like Art Briles before, he was so successful in the 80s with Baylor before jumping to the college ranks at a lower level and then working his way up to Baylor. And his offense was super successful there with similar air raid tendencies as the Mike Leach, the Cliff Kingsbury, the Graham Harrells as well.
Yeah. And that, they do stuff like that at Mater Dei too. But like a Gus Malzahn had this, innovative kind of offensive thing, and they wanted to bring him up. So that's usually what you're seeing out there, Bob. But thanks for the question.
It's usually easier for a younger guy to make that move, though, just because there's an age discrepancy still as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for the call, Bob. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you watching, even though you're not necessarily a USC fan.
Oh, thanks.
I'm going to go to a little bit of questions just so our people on social media feel a little bit of love. We still have calls coming in. Thank you guys so much for that.
Wow, that's
we
crazy.
will get to you ASAP, Rocky. Okay, let's go to Facebook. Tom says, has there been any feedback from wide receivers as to which QB they prefer?
We've talked to them all. They said Jack Sears 100%. No.
Ryan, do not start something. Even back when the original quarterback battle was happening between all three last fall, they're kind of tight-lipped. You're going to get the same kind of politician answer where they say, hey, we rotate so much, I don't even see who's back there. I just catch the ball. You kind of get those answers, and then once JT Daniels was named the starter, Michael Pittman goes, yeah, I wish we kind of had more time to build up chemistry. And you're like, okay, now you say this. So you don't really get a full answer from these guys when the battle is open right now.
It is a very interesting topic, though, because we're getting Periscope things like, people are thinking, oh, it's going to be JT Daniels no matter what, or it should be this guy, should be that guy. People are very adamant about it's either, yes, he should be the starter, or why isn't this the guy the starter, or this is an unfair practice. Like, it's very, very popular to talk about how this quarterback thing is going.
True. Shotgun, any thoughts?
I think you guys have covered it. I mean, the receivers give pretty bland answers when asked questions about if they prefer a quarterback. They'll definitely say no. But when you ask about the quarterbacks, it's kind of generic stuff when they answer.
Yeah.
Also,
as far as the players go and stuff, we have our opinions too, and we did get a lot from Graham Harrell. We can probably answer. What Graham said, we can kind of answer when people ask questions and stuff. But he said a lot about the quarterbacks yesterday.
Yeah, and also when you're a wide receiver and there's an open battle, you're not going to trash a certain quarterbacks. What if he's named the quarterback? That would be bad in awkward locker room.
You could, if
tension.
you're like a John Jackson and you're like number 5, and you could like pick a dark horse and be like, yeah,
Deontay Burnett
Slotus is my guy. Yeah. Then it's like, oh.
Then you build up chemistry and win a Rose Bowl.
Yeah, unless Keaton Slovis never becomes the starter,
Right.
and then you're like, he never gets the ball
You're
thrown
taking
to
a
him
risk.
because the other quarterbacks are mad at him. Is that what you're saying?
Or John Jackson just goes, Bryce Young, I'm really looking forward to that. Just
Wow.
hedge your bets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's futures right there.
Let's go to another caller. We have Larry from Vancouver. Exciting international caller. Larry, you're on the line.
Hello.
Hi, what's your question for the
Hello.
team?
Hey, Larry. You're our first international caller ever, unless you want to count Wisconsin. But yes, we're good.
No, I've been watching your show for the last few weeks, so I kind of got that impression.
Thanks, Larry.
My question for you is, the USC coaches and yourselves all seem to tell me that come September on a Saturday, the Trojans are going to be the best team on the field, the most talented team. And then you do a disconnect where you tell me you've only got 2 safeties, 3 corners, 5 linemen, and then the bottom falls out, and you got 4 receivers, albeit really, really good receivers. A team consists of 100 players, and depth is a major component of talent. And I see you guys having a major problem with depth. So do you really think you're the most talented team on the field, or are you being just a tad disingenuous?
I'll start with saying the USC football.com team
Yes.
is the deepest team on the field.
Yeah, Larry, our team is definitely the deepest. Nobody does anything like this. So we don't have people calling from Canada like they're other whatever they're doing like this. So we are definitely the deepest. We are not part of the USC football team, the one that you are talking about. And there are some real depth concerns. But I think a lot of those will be alleviated in the fall. There's a lot of injuries and things like that. So my personal opinion is they will be the most talented team on their entire schedule. You might say Notre Dame, but there's a lot of matrices. I've talked to people for my Pac-12 podcast, still feel that they're more talented than Washington's going to be for this season. They just haven't been as well coached. The coaching is going to be better. I think depth is a real, there can be a concern. There could be some injuries and stuff, but I'm not saying they're going to be the best team. I might not even pick them to win the Pac-12 South, but I still feel they're going to be the most talented, and I feel they're going to be better coached than they were last year. So it should be an improvement. I'm guessing, to go from 5-7 to 8-4, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, just from what I've seen from the improved coaching.
And you also look at the recruiting rankings, and we look at those, and USC is still, with the talent that's on the roster, is still ranked above other programs in the Pac-12. Just as far as now, there are concerns at certain positions, and the question becomes, hey, did you recruit too many of this particular position and not enough of this other one? When you have a spate of catastrophes at the safety spot where you lose players to everything under the sun, whether it be injury or off the field or just players leaving the program, there's a lot of different things there where that position went from position of definite strength. Man, we got so many guys back there that we can play. The coaches are talking about going into the spring or going into the fall, and then suddenly you get to the final game, and Clancy Pendergast is like, yeah, Jordan McMillan, can you go in? I know you have never played safety in a competitive game before, but get in there and play, and he gets his first interception of his life. Yeah. So that's kind of can happen in a season when things outside off the football field can affect the team as well. But overall, the depth, the talent is there. There is a depth of talent there. Now, there may not be depth at particular positions, and that is a concern for USC. And if the coaching is not good, those positions can be exploited. And that is something that is the question mark. Can USC exploit other teams' weaknesses versus having their own exploited? And last year, that was the case. They were bad in certain areas, and teams definitely were able to run at them, were able to do a lot of things that they couldn't stop, even though there was a lot of talent on the roster.
Yeah.
The talent wasn't being put in the right spots and weren't being coached up in the right way. I think that was the bigger concern than just the overall talent on the team.
Yeah, I agree. Boise State doesn't usually have a lot more talent than some of the teams they play, and they beat them all the time. So it's about the coaching aspect of it, and I think USC got better at that. So we'll see, Larry, but thanks for the call. From Canada, interesting. So a little off topic. Go check out Netflix Dirty Money. It's like a docu-series thing where they talk about it's like
the maple syrup one.
There's a maple syrup. It's great. So like different scandals where money, stealing money and blah, all this stuff. But the fifth one is like this random thing. They're talking about like mafia and syndicates and things like that, and it's about maple syrup in Canada. Like Quebec controls like all of the maple syrup, and there's like a black market for maple syrup. There was a huge heist of like $30 million worth of maple syrup. That's what like these Canadian callers, like the cool stuff like that. We don't have maple syrup stealing stuff. Like that was awesome.
Wow.
Check it out, Larry.
Hot take?
I think it's the other side of the country for him, but
True.
Completely the other side of the country.
Hot take, maple syrup isn't that good. That's all.
Get the hell out
we just lost all our Canadian listeners.
I'm so sorry.
It's like a commodity there.
I'm sorry.
And Vermont listeners.
Oh, yeah. Sorry to all of you guys. We have a question on YouTube from Jose. He says, what's going on with Solomon Tuliaupupu?
So Clay Helton explained on Saturday, we got some updates on injuries, including Solomon. Keely asked him about it. He said that he practiced 4 practices this season, and then his foot was sore. The surgically repaired foot, it was sore, so they decided to be overprotective and shut him down, and that is why he has not participated since then. The question becomes, is this a lingering injury? Will he be back? And we've had questions. There's another question on here about linebackers and him being in the mix. You can't really say he's in the mix until he's consistently on the field for 2 weeks of practice.
Right, yeah.
Like you start saying, well, if Daniel Morabebe is healthy, the tight end position. Well, you can't say that until he's back and practicing consistently because we haven't seen it. Daniel Morabebe has been out for a year and a half basically, and he was back for a short period and was not the same player that he had been the previous year. And that's what you start wondering about Solomon Tuliaupupu. Is this injury going to linger and cause him to struggle to be on the field for the length of his career? I mean, I said earlier, I think of Chris Gallipo. There was a guy who had a back injury and just sapped his potential. A guy that was great coming out of Servite, was a 5-star linebacker, looked like he had NFL potential, but the back injury turned him into a Pac-12 player and a guy that didn't really get much of a chance at the NFL level.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. And for sure, I think you look at what he was able to do those first couple of practices, there's potential there. Mm-hmm. We actually did put in the war room, I think. So USCFootball.com every Friday, we put a war room out. Put a little tidbit in there like a month or so ago saying, watch out, the foot injury might still be around. And apparently we were right.
Yeah, and the thing about Solo is that it officially moved into the concerning category for me based on what Clay Helton said, because Solo's told us, the USCFootball.com team, on multiple occasions, like, oh, I will be ready soon. He told Chris Trevino that Solo was being saved for PRPs as a precaution. He'll be ready to go for fall camp. We never saw him in fall. We heard Jordan Iosefa say at the beginning of spring camp, yeah, Solo wasn't supposed to be here day one, but he pushed it and he came out here and he did a great job, which I know is Jordan praising his teammate, but also is a little bit eyebrow raising, like, should he have been out there? Yeah. Not sure. But the fact that it's lingering this much and that it seems surprising for Solo based on what he's telling us is not a good sign. So that's what's happening with him.
Yeah, we'll check him out over the summer, see if he takes part in drills. If not, then you just have to wait for fall camp and see if he gets to go then. But thanks, Jose.
Yep. We have one more live caller from the Cattlemen in Tennessee, which sounds intense. I'm not sure what's in store for us here.
The Cattlemen.
Yes.
Yes.
You are on the line. Hello.
Greetings from Dollywood to Hollywood, Ryan. It's your old buddy, the Cattleman from the Bill King scene.
Hey, what's up going on, man? We love. I haven't been on Bill King for a while, but tell
Bill.
I
love when you come on. I love when you come on. I've called you before.
Yeah.
Got a question. By the way, heard your wife on Tennessee Sports Radio this week on the UCLA TIF.
Yeah, she was breaking some news down there. Apparently, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
She was driving back.
Heads up on that.
Yeah, so if people didn't know, like UCLA was looking at Rick Barnes, the Tennessee basketball coach, and then she was going crazy. She was in Vegas, and she was going crazy on her drive back, and then making calls, calling sources, trying to find out what was going on. But he ended up staying in Tennessee.
Who knew we had 2 sports stars under the same roof?
Yeah.
So what's your question for the team?
I got my question. It's an administrative question about USC. But Keely, real quick for you, yes. I was going to ask you to marry me. I had my 10-page prenup all cooked up, and then you said you don't like maple syrup, so I'm not going to.
Oh,
sorry.
Deal breaker.
Yeah, I'm pretty glad I said that. That's good. I'm glad.
Okay, guys. My question. Two-part. Has USC hired a president yet?
Yes,
they have.
Carol Folt has been hired, so she was a former chancellor of North Carolina.
I thought that was right. I read the LA Times. I was just double checking. And my question, like I told your screeners about Lynn Swan, You know, guys, I listened to the talk about Graham Harrell and Clay Helton, the elephant in the corner that nobody seems to want to talk about anymore. But it seems to me the real question is Lynn Swann. I think the card show deal on the East Coast was a disgrace. I think it was a fireable disgrace. And my question for you is, guys, is why does Lynn Swann still have a job, and what are the odds that he'll have a job come 1st of September? And love the show, watching on Periscope.
Thanks, man. And yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's being asked a lot. The LA Times has written a few pieces being very critical of Lynn Swann going to that, autograph signing, like you mentioned. He's in Augusta right now, and he's been there. He's going to be there for like 2 weeks or something. And there was an event where they had amateur women playing at Augusta the week before, and a couple of USC players were there. It makes sense if he wants to go out and check that out, but to miss like the last 2 weeks of spring football, the spring showcase, where there's all these people on campus, and Swim with Mike and all these events, to be down in Augusta where, that's what's going on. And to me, when you saw Magic Johnson resign last night, I see a lot of parallels between him and Lynn Swann and Pat Hayden as well, where you're talking about a guy. This is a very important job. It's a job that takes a lot of dedication and grinding and doing things on the administrative side. And someone like, Magic Johnson, he wanted to do the fun stuff, but I don't know if he wanted to do the grind of what it is, flying to Slovakia to go, check out some point guard or something like that. He doesn't really want to do that kind of stuff. He wants to have fun. And I think the same thing with Lynn Swann and Pat Hayden. Those are guys, none of those guys needed that job. So you have this very demanding job that they don't need. And there's a lot of criticism. Magic Johnson talked about it. He didn't like to be criticized. Lynn Swann doesn't want to be criticized. Pat Hayden didn't want to be. When Pat Hayden announced that Clay Helton was being the permanent head coach, and people were like going, oh my, and questioning him, I think he was like shocked. They're like, don't you understand who I am? I'm Pat Hayden. I just told you what was going to happen. And Lynn Swann, some of the tone deaf stuff that he says, it's the exact same thing. No one's ever questioned him like this before, and no one's ever been this critical, but this is the position you're in. So yeah, I think that's a real concern. I don't know what's going to happen with Carol Folt, but there's a lot of USC fans that are just like you, Cattleman, that thinks that he's probably not going to be around much longer.
I mean, Adrian Wojnarowski yesterday tweeted after the Magic Johnson incident that since taking over the president of the Lakers, Magic Johnson never fully committed to the job. Often he was traveling and away from the team, autograph session, masters. His office hours were limited. Press conferences that Lynn Swann does not have. He didn't do a lot of scouting. That's not exactly the same, but the fact that you don't, if you were to make a coaching change, would he be ready to do that? Running an NBA team takes a tremendous commitment of time and energy, and that's something where I think Lynn Swann originally, when he was brought in by Max Nikias, part of the reason why he got that job was to be a fundraiser. He's a face that a lot of USC donors would recognize, would appreciate, would love to hang out with. And I think he's been able to do that. But I don't know that necessarily he was expecting all the other aspects of the job to be there. And I think it is a tremendous commitment of time and energy that maybe he was not anticipating. So I think that's been something that he's had to try to deal with. And now you get the signing and the masters and all that stuff. And in itself, in a bubble, it's not a big deal. But in the overarching scheme of it, and the bunch of those things add up, and the fact that USC went 5-7 with their bell cow program last year, then
basketball team under 500. 3 of your employees hired. I mean,
the admissions scandal is much bigger than a lot of things.
Yeah.
That should be taking precedence over everything. When your school, and not just your school, but your athletic department has an admission or has an athletic official involved in a scandal that has the FBI indicting 50 people, that should take precedence over everything. Now, granted, that's a month ago, but things are still coming out. There were just indictments that just came out yesterday. So that should be the main, you should be focusing on what do we have to change, what do we have to do different, how do we, create a different program, how do we make sure this doesn't happen, and that should be a full-time gig. And I know that the Masters is scheduled every year, so he was planning to go to this beforehand. He's on some committee, I don't know, like a welcome committee type thing. The autograph session was planned well in advance, but sometimes you have to adjust your plans.
Yeah.
If your grandpa gets sick, you go visit your grandpa. You take a day off work. Even if you're scheduled to, if I'm scheduled to go to the UCLA USC game, grandpa comes first. Certain things have to take priority, and I don't know that Lynn Swann has adapted well to that.
No. 100% agree.
Thank you for the call, Cattleman.
Yeah, great call.
Great call. Let's go to we have multiple questions, like multiple questions about Graham Harrell's offensive scheme and the predictability of it and how predictable it could be. Gerald says, if the opponent figures out the offense, how does Graham Harrell adjust? What can he do different besides running the ball more? And then Sean had a question of, does the simplicity of the new offense affect NFL drafts prospects of some players? If the new offense creates more wins, does it matter if it's more simple? We've gotten a lot of questions about the simpleness, so I think this is a general time to address that issue.
Yeah, and I think the players have talked about it, and Graham Harrell's talked about it. If you don't have that many plays, if you can install the whole thing in a week, you have to make sure that you're executing it at a very high level. And it's more of a philosophy than like a scheme, as Graham Harrell will tell you, and that's part of it. Is like you're just going to do. You have so much time in college. You're going to focus and do that's really, really well, whatever you do. And I think there's, subtle adjustments that he can make as the offensive coordinator. I think the players can as well. And you're putting 5 guys out in a pattern and spreading out all over the field. 1 or 2 of them are going to get open a lot of the time. So it's just how efficiently can you do that? The USC was a big play offense that just relied on the home run. Now it's going to be trying to be an offense that can be efficient and move down the field and move the chains. And I feel like that teams are going to be able to make adjustments, but I think it looks simple, but I think you can have it work like a complex system as well. So the whole point is they want the players to not be screwing plays up. They know what to do. Like, hey, this is my job. I'm going to do this. And if you can do it really well, you can execute it at a high level. And even if a defense is kind of geared up to stop it, you can still have success.
And you're going to do a lot of eye candy. You're going to motion guys. You're going to put different formations where a guy is running an out where he may run it from one side of the formation versus the other side. It may become a crossing route, and he goes across. You're going to also – there's going to be variations. That same out may become an in. You motion across, and now it's an in instead of an out. And you could change one or two of the routes, and suddenly it's a completely different play.
Yes.
So I think that there's a lot of things you can do with that to change things. But I think JT Daniels answered this perfectly yesterday. I asked him if he thinks that they have everything down with the install, and he said, yeah, we know everything. We just need to get a lot of reps. And he said, quote, when you're not a super complex scheme offense, defenses are going to start to adjust to it, but that's kind of the whole scheme of the air raid is we don't care if they know. We're just going to out-execute them. So you just need to get a lot of reps to get good at executing them. So I asked him, is the USC defense, are they adjusting to it? And he said, yeah, and he said that's good. He said they're starting to make more plays. They're starting to get a real understanding of what we're doing, which is really good to see because that it makes every route have to be run better than it was before. It makes every decision have to be quicker than it was before. So if the defense in practice starts knowing what you're doing, you have to be that much quicker, that much crisper, and I think that sets you up. If their defense gives them a great look in practice to when they get to Saturdays, that is a team going to be able to adjust and put in a week? Are they going to be able to learn everything USC is doing? I think you have more issues with a less complex offense and teams knowing what you're going to do when you go to like a bowl game and you have a full month to prepare. If Nick Saban has a month to prepare for a Mike Leach offense, then he has a better chance of shutting it down than if he has a week. So I think that that's going to be the big difference. Early in the season, our team's going to be able to slow them down. And what adjustments do they make in-game? What adjustments do they make week by week? Because there's going to be some adjustments. They have put the whole playbook in. There will still be some things that they change as they go week by week based on opponents.
Yeah, and I just read an article for doing the podcast of champions about Mike Leach. This is from his Texas Tech days and how they incorporate some of the statistical models and analytics. And I don't think we've really talked to Graham Harrell much about that, but they use a lot of that stuff where you might add a wheel route for the running back to a play and realize that even if you're not throwing it to the guy, it just opened things up more. And so it makes the regular play successful. So they can make adjustments like that where, like Shotgun said, you change one route. Like, instead of having the running back stay and protect on this side, we're going to have them run a wheel route over here, and you increase like the effectiveness of that play by like 25%. So you can make adjustments like that throughout and make things look different. And I think even like when Norm Chow, I think that was a lot of his philosophy too. He tried to make an offense that was simple but looked complex, and I think that's part of what they want to try to do.
We have a question from our buddy Joan. She says on YouTube, obviously we have the talent to win the Pac-12. Just lost her question, but I think she said, but do we have the coaching talent to win the Pac-12 this next year?
I think yes, because 2 years ago you won it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's talented enough. I think the coaching improvements have been made. I think that USC can do it with the coaches they have. I mean, it's the Pac-12 too. I'm not talking about win a playoff game. You're talking about winning the Pac-12. It's not like this is a killer conference right now. I think there's the powers in the North for sure. The South is certainly winnable, and then you got to try to just win one game.
And they've beat Washington before. They beat Oregon before. They beat these teams previously. So it's not like it's something they haven't done. It's not like there's some team out there. It's not like Alabama's in the North, and you're like, well, the only time we played them recently, we lost by a bunch. It's not like that. It's all teams they beat previously.
Yeah. Thanks, Joan.
John on Facebook says, haven't heard much about the O-line and how it's adjusting to the new offense as a unit. Are they coming together? What are your predictions for the starting five this fall?
I think your starting five is, as of right now, there's no reason to believe it's different unless a guy like Clayton Bradley comes back healthy or Bernard Shermer gets in the mix, guys that have not been practicing. It's going to be Austin Jackson at left tackle. Left guard, you got Elijah Vera Tucker. At center, you got Brett Nealon. At right guard, you have Andrew Voorhees, and right tackle, you got Jalen McKenzie.
Yeah.
That's been the group that has been the starting group the entire time, unless someone has been banged up or Austin Jackson was out last week.
Which is a little surprising because you thought they might be moving people around, but that was kind of a group they're just like, nope, these are the starters.
And part of that, I think, is because you haven't had that top tier of competitors. I mean, the guys in the second group are all inexperienced guys with just have not played at all on the offensive side. So I just don't think that there's been the I thought Clayton Bradley and Bernard Shermer would be in the mix to compete for open spots, and they have not practiced. So it's hard to say. There's just not guy like Frank Martin's not a guy I thought, okay, coming into the spring, he's going to compete for first team reps. But he's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Liam Jimmons as a right tackle has been very surprising how well he has done. Now, he's had some false starts and stuff. He's just jumping a little bit, but I've been surprised at how well he's done, and I think that they're able to mask some deficiencies, not any deficiencies, but some deficiencies there with the offense itself. Because if you're spread out as an offensive line and you don't let them through the gaps, it takes them that much longer to get there. And if you're quick passing, that's what we've seen. We haven't seen a ton of deep dropbacks and a lot of sacks. We've seen some sacks, but usually that's against the second team offensive line.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
We have a question from Mike, who says, who's been more impressive this spring, Drake Jackson or Marquise Stepp? Nice background graphics, by the way. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, thank you. Both.
The spring showcase standouts, if you will.
Yeah, but I think they've both done well throughout the spring. I'll probably go with Drake Jackson just because he's a true freshman and they're sort of like redefining like the position he's going to play. Like he might play so well that like you just have to get him on the field sort of thing. Marquise Stepp, I think, will be in the rotation, but I feel like he's probably going to still be the third guy. So I'm going to go with Drake Jackson as a true freshman. He's certainly making a case for him to be, in that rotation.
I think Drake Jackson, just because the athleticism is elite for a defensive lineman, and the fact that Marquise Stepp's not drawing, the coaches aren't going, oh man, he looks like Lindell White, whereas Drake Jackson is hearing, yeah, he reminds me of Leonard Williams.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Rasheem Green. And when the coaches tell you that stands out. Nothing against Marquise Stepp because he's had a great spring for sure.
I think Clay Helton was talking about Marquise Stepp some about him being a little bit bigger before and losing some weight and how fast he was and things. So they've definitely got some praise, but I still go with Drake.
Yeah, I think losing weight for Marquise Stepp is a good sign, but Drake Jackson, just early enrollee. I told Shotgun, when a guy is good when he kind of blends in as an early enrollee. You don't realize like, oh, you're right, that's the freshman out there making mistakes. Drake Jackson is one of those guys like, oh, he's in the mix,
And wearing number 99, just like, oh, it just seemed like he belonged right away. It's like one of those things when you're looking at a bunch of guys in numbers and you know some of them, but there's a bunch of new ones changes. Then sometimes just people look like the person they used to, they replaced or whatever. Not that saying like Wally Batika was someone that you saw a lot, but he just looked like someone that would be a regular on the defense.
We have a question from Jasper Smith on YouTube. He says, aside from the early enrollees, who will arrive in fall camp and make an impact?
That was exactly what I was about to bring in there.
Oh.
You got it. You're on top of it, Keely. Great job.
Nice, Jasper. Jasper's the legend on.
The answer I would go with, my first thought would be Jalen Watson, the JUCO cornerback. He is a legit 6'2", and if the tape plays, if it shows up on Howard Jones Field, I think he has a chance to be in that mix because, like we talked about earlier, no one's stepped forward and taken over either one of the starting cornerback positions this spring.
Yeah, I think Max Williams is around there now. I'm curious to see what he's able to do when he comes in. Notice we're mentioning defensive backs, but the fact that
Because there's openings there.
There are definitely some openings, and I don't know, if when he gets some nickel run, whatever. But he was just a playmaker, and he's not the kind of guy. He's not the size that USC was typically recruiting. So I think they must really like him a lot. I've always liked him a lot when I would see him play in high school. They seemed like USC shied away from him, and then they kind of got back in on him. So he's one I would watch too.
Drake London.
I was going to say that next.
I think we've talked about this previously, but him, another guy to keep an eye on, which we have not really talked about, and it's going to be hard because of the running back situation. But Keenan Kristen, that speed could play, and the air raid offense does a really good job of finding a way to get speedy running backs. If he can catch passes, especially seam route up the middle or something where they get a guy a little bit of space, and suddenly a normal 5-yard carry is 75 yards because of the speed of a guy like that. If you give him just enough window, he's a guy they might find a way to get in there to use that speed, especially if a guy like Velus Jones is not back.
Right, and if Stephen Carr isn't really as effective as you would expect him to be.
I think Keenan Kristen's speed is different than any of the guys that are on the roster right now as far as the running backs. So I don't think that Stephen Carr is the same. I don't think he was running 10 whatever as it was in the hundreds.
And Keenan's a workhorse. Chris Trevino and I have something in the works, but in that process, we got to see Keenan work out, and he works out like a pro. So that's a good one USC is getting. But you mentioned Stephen Carr, Ryan. John on Facebook says, do you guys see Stephen Carr having a breakout year?
I kind of think he does. I know Shotgun. Yeah, my gut feeling is he's going to have a big year in this offense. I don't think it's been like amazing. Like he's not like had some amazing plays this spring, but I feel like he's going to have a big fall.
He's made a couple of nice catches, out of the backfield. It's hard to tell because usually it's in 7-on-7. They're not running a lot of stuff to the running backs in the team period because they want to, I think, really focus on the wide receivers, figuring out where they should be. So I don't think they're implementing too much with wheel routes or anything else with the running backs right now. But I'm not going to shy away from my 3-year-old comment now that he would be a Heisman contender as a junior. So I'm going to stay with it until he looks good out there. Doesn't look like anything's hampering him. We won't really know until it's some true live action stuff, which they did more of that the week he was. It seemed like they did more of that the week that he and Vi were both out. It just seemed like Marquise Stepp was getting a ton of live action stuff. But I think he's going to be a guy that will have a big contribution this year. I don't know. It depends on what you want to classify as breakout. He's probably not going to have the Heisman year that I predicted 3 years ago, but I think he's going to be a big-time contributor for this team.
Oh, you mentioned Marquise Stepp already, but just while we're on the topic, Guy on Facebook says, what kind of pass-catching threat is Marquise Stepp?
He's third out of the group, though. I think he catches the ball well, but he's third out of that group between him, Vi, and Stephen Carr.
But he's better than like some of the guys we've seen.
Better than Rojo.
Yeah, I mean Rojo wasn't that good at it, and just whatever. But yeah, I think he's definitely he's better than serviceable. He's good there, but the other guys are better.
And Marquise Stepp said that he's never caught a pass in high school, so that's partially why he
seems like he has pretty natural hands, but there's not the comfort level that you see the other guys doing. They've been doing, like Stephen Carr's been doing it forever. And, we saw every 7-on-7 in tournament we'd see him in. He's catching like 10 passes a game. It's crazy.
He could line up at wide receiver and you wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
LDR on YouTube says, what do you guys think about each coach on the staff thus far? How are their groups performing?
Each coach. Wow.
So we got a call in we had a live question on our podcast earlier about ranking the new coaches.
We did.
So
from Orion in Hermosa Beach.
Yes.
I'll go back to my list there, and Keely and I answered this, and we're close to each other, a little bit different on Mike Jinks, but I said Graham Harrell is the guy that has the most impact, obviously, with the offense. Tim Drevno with the offensive line, I think he has the most impact. We're including recruiting and on-field. And then I followed that with Mike Jinks, Greg Burns, Chad Kay, Colbert, and finished with Joe DeForest. Just the guys, the new coaches or new positions that they're in. That was my ranking of the coaches. I think that that you're seeing positive things from each of these groups. From what we've seen, it's just positive so far. There hasn't been a lot of question marks. Now, some of those will definitely come during the season. You go, why are they doing, or why are you not rotating here, or whatever it may be. But so far, and it's hope springs eternal in the spring. It's a great, especially baseball. It's a baseball saying, but yeah, that's what it is. We're in the spring, a lot of positive from the group, and there just hasn't been a lot of like, what are they doing out there?
Yeah.
Which we did have those concerns in the past.
Yeah. I think
Especially
LDR
last spring too.
Yeah, I think LDR will. I think it's good to see how the new coaches are doing. We'll have to kind of rank them or see, their position groups probably in the fall sometime. But I think Graham Harrell definitely having the most impact, and it kind of goes down from there.
Yeah, I would agree. Charles on Facebook says, other than Velez, is there a chance of any of the other wide receivers returning?
I think Trayvon Sidney was taking a visit to Illinois.
Yeah. Him and Oluwole Batiku.
Yeah, I haven't seen Josh Mentor Bebe. He's been on Twitter and stuff, but I haven't really heard anything.
I saw him on campus after the spring showcase. He was eating, so I think they're still feeding him.
Yeah,
which is good.
But yeah, it didn't sound like any of those receivers were coming back outside of Jones, but I mean, we'll see.
The question with the whole transfer portal is, it's a new thing. There are more people in the portal than there are open spots, and how is that going to end up playing out? Are players going to end up returning to their schools? Not just the USC players, but are some players going to end up? Are coaches going to,
We've seen it. Yeah, people come back because there's really not spots or perfect spots for them.
And I was talking with someone in the sports information department yesterday, and we believe that there's like a cutoff date where the coaches can actually cut ties with the players. If you're in the transfer portal for so long, you can cut ties because obviously a school has to move on too. So you can't. They don't want the schools to be being held hostage by players, and you have 75 players going in the transfer portal, and you don't know who's coming back. So it gives teams a chance to move on, but who's going to allow players to come back if there are openings? That's going to happen.
There could be people out in the middle, just in limbo.
More than like Greg Johnson, who was in the portal for a week or whatever. There's going to be someone who's been in the portal for a while, and they just don't have a home, and they end up finding their way back. Or you're going to have some really good FCS teams. Like there's going to be like Eastern Washington or something. It's just going to be a dominant team because
that would be fun.
They're going to pull in a bunch of. It's kind of like in college baseball. You'll have JUCO teams that are really, really good, a ton of talent that ends up being in the big leagues and stuff because it's a different path to the majors. But you'll have guys that bounce, what they call bounce backs, where you go from you go to USC, you go to a JUCO for a year so that you can transfer to another school and play all 3 years. So I think you may end up having bounce backs like that, where guys will go down to the FCS for a year and then come back up to Division I the next year.
Yeah,
I think you're going to end up having some more guys like that, more than like the Harold Perilou, I think it was the quarterback that was at LSU and went to Jacksonville State and then bounced back to somewhere else. I think more than the normal where a guy gets in trouble or something type of thing.
All right, thanks for that, Charles.
We have a funny comment on YouTube. Austin says, "Whoa, Rojo caught the check down Hail Mary from Sam against Texas. Put some respect on it."
Nice.
He also caught that beautifully thrown and beautifully caught wheel route against Arizona that happened right in front of me. So that was a great one, too. His hands really improved later in his career. But early in his career, it was like
his pro day wasn't good. Like he didn't catch the ball well at the pro day.
He that's not going to be his strength, even in the next league. That's something he's got to work on still. But when your teammates all get all giddy and are all shocked that you make a catch on a wheel route during a fall practice, you're leading into your junior year, then that tells you what's the actual rate of your catchability is.
Fair enough. Steven says, glad to see you guys on Saturday. Glad to see you, Steven. Jeffrey says, was on the sideline Saturday. Tell me more about Devin Williams. What a specimen. I think part of the reason why you haven't heard more about Devin Williams is because he's usually inconsistent. He'll make a great play, he'll make a great catch, and then he'll drop a couple. So I think that's maybe why you haven't heard more about him. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I think Shotgun was advocating for USC to try to get him an easy catch just so he could catch the ball and run because he wasn't really getting involved. They would throw him to him like he had not a catch in his career and it would be like 4th and 2 and they would throw it to him and it's like why is that going to be his first why would you want that to be his first catch? So they needed to bring him along a little slowly, but like Keely said, there's been some consistency problems.
Yeah, last year they were trying to use him as just a deep threat. So basically, if you watched the first couple games, you saw, okay, when number 2 comes in, he's going deep. That was basically it. So you could game plan for that as an opposing team and that was what I was advocating, is like, this guy is potential star at your school and has all the physical capabilities. Why not get him a short catch and let him run for a couple yards? Because he can break some tackles too and get his confidence up. And I think that's something his confidence has to gain his confidence. He has to grow his confidence because he's inconsistent catching the ball. And it's just a mental thing. He's got to get his confidence up. He's got to be more. I mean, it's keeping his eyes on the ball. It's all those things, but it's also mental. When a wide receiver starts dropping balls, it's partly mental. So I think they needed to grow his confidence, and they didn't do a good job of it last year. So they can do some things this year to potentially rise it up. But it's a clear 4th or 5th. There's a clear top 3. Those 3 guys are going to be the guys on the field most of the time, and then you'll get to Devin Williams or John Jackson or Valus if he comes back. Those top 3, I mean, even when they're talking about it, Michael Pittman was talking just about the receivers, and he said, yeah, when me and Tyler and Amon are out there, and then he caught himself a little bit like a couple sentences later. He's like, oh, yeah, and Devin. Like, that tells you where his ranking is.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a guy like Graham Harrell saying those 3 raise the standard of what he expects from wide receivers at the college level. He said from now on he's going to expect more out of future players just because seeing how hard they work and what they're capable of. So definitely seems like those 3.
And that's a guy I would work on his confidence, like take special attention for, because he is a dude. He's 6'5", 220. He can go up and get it. He's fast. He can do everything you want him to. You just got to build that confidence a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sean on YouTube or Facebook says, who do you guys think will be the starting QB? Do you still think it will be JT Daniels?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes. I thought Graham Harrell's, we haven't really got into this yet, but Graham Harrell went into his evaluations, pros and cons of all 4 quarterbacks on Tuesday. He also gave an update about the timeline of his decision. He said it'll probably come towards the end of fall camp. That's what he seemed to suggest. But he said towards the end, everyone will kind of know who the leader of the pack is, and thus they will start giving more and more reps to that guy.
Right.
But what did you guys think of what Graham Harrell had to say about each quarterback on Tuesday?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, he went into a lot of detail about those guys, and if you try to read into the order that he did it and all that kind of stuff, it's interesting. I still feel it's going to be JT Daniels. I mean, talking about Jack Sears and how athletic he is and how mobile he is and how sometimes that can get him in trouble. There's a lot of the fan base, and maybe it's some of the. It's funny. It's the Orange County Mafia that doesn't like Mater Day because that's they're JT Daniels people, but there's Orange County people that, hey, they want, the San Clemente, they want Jack Sears to be the guy. He didn't have a great showcase. He threw that interception. He threw another one that looked like maybe an interception or maybe it was a strip sack or whatever. But, he's kind of been like a Devin Williams, like inconsistent at times. There's good times and there's bad times. I still feel like watching JT Daniels, it seems like the offense fits him well. He's probably performed the best in my eyes so far. So, we'll see. But I thought he didn't. I don't think Graham Harrell gave a lot away, but it's hard for me to picture it being anyone else but the guy that started 11 games or whatever it was last year.
Yeah, and I'll bring up Graham Harrell's comments here in a second on my computer, but him talking about each of the guys, and Keely and I talked about this on the Family Feud podcast. Check that out tomorrow.
Check it.
That the thing that he noted about each quarterback was the thing he also said could get them in trouble. So he's talking about Jack Sears, and he said he's got more mobility. He's a guy that can move out of the pocket. He said it's kind of a double-edged sword, though. So there's times when he has an open guy and instead pulls it down and runs. And again, he's probably the most athletic, so he can do that. But that sometimes the guy's open.
You don't want
that
to be a crutch, yeah.
Yeah. So and the double-edged sword comment is something that could be stated about each of these. He said Matt Fink. He said when he's hot, he can be really special. And he said he's also the most emotional, which can be a positive or a negative. He gets extremely excited. He starts talking noise with the defense and stuff, but it can turn negative at times. And he said he gets himself in trouble. He said with him that we sat him down and talked to him just to stay positive, because when he's positive, he's pretty dang good. Keaton Slovis, he said he's special with his arm. He's got special arm talent. He said he's gotten better and better every day. He said one of the positives for him is that he doesn't have another offense. He hasn't been in another collegiate offense, so he's starting fresh with this. So that might give him a little bit of an advantage. He says he throws the ball really special, but sometimes that can get him in trouble because he tries to make throws that he shouldn't make. And then with JT Daniels, he said he's done a good job. He's been consistent. He's very smart. I know JT. But JT gets in trouble when he overthinks because he's so smart. I think he overthinks things sometimes, overanalyzes things, and isn't as fast making decisions because he's overanalyzing them. So each thing that was the thing that makes each quarterback special is also the double-edged sword, and is the negative for them too. So that's really interesting there. That's how he kind of
like the positive, negative things. Like you're in a job interview, like what's your biggest issue? It's like I work too hard, like something that kind of thing. Like you're like, well, he's really smart, but sometimes he thinks too much,
and that's the thing with JT Daniels. They're trying to get him to if there's green grass, just throw it. If you see the opening, make the throw, and not to think too much about it. I think the quote was. We don't have to break down exactly where 11 guys on the field are.
Yeah.
So if you see an opening, just throw it. Don't worry about having to see where every single person. Don't worry about the backside safety when you're throwing it to the right. I mean, those type of things is what he's saying.
Interesting.
We have another question. We have a lot of questions.
We got a lot of questions.
I know.
Thanks for all the questions. There's like tons.
I know. Oh man, it's not showing up. I'm sorry. Someone posted, and he wants this question to be asked. Derek says, "Will we be able to stop a team on 3rd and 19?" Sassy question.
Was that a question that got asked of the Packers over and over and over after Michael Vick completed a 3rd and 26 against them in the playoff game?
Yeah. Curious. I mean, how different do you think the defense is going to be? I mean, this was a defense that takes a lot of risks and puts guys on an island. I don't know if that's going to change a whole lot. So you might give up some big plays like that. But you're hoping that the front four can put some pressure on a quarterback and make them get the ball out faster than they want to and not give them a lot of time to find something downfield. But sometimes when the pressure doesn't get there and you got a guy one-on-one on the outside, you give up a big play. And we've seen that happen to USC a lot. I don't know if that's going to change much.
I found my question. It's Ricky A. Reed. It's kind of spicy, but he said, "I'm concerned that this staff will still be inept at making effective in-game halftime adjustments. What are y'all's thoughts?"
I think the offense will make adjustments. I think that's something that Graham Harrell does. And we've seen it even in practices where he's talking about how he's seen some things and they'll make a little bit of an adjustment in practice as well against the defense. So I think they will do more on the offensive side. And again, I said this a while back. I think if the offense is scoring more points, it's giving the defense a little bit more time to rest. I think that if you have more time on the sidelines, then, hey, you can implement an adjustment a little bit better than if you have 3 plays and a TV timeout and suddenly you're back on the field over and over and over again like it was sometimes for the offense last year or sometimes with the defense with the offense struggling last year.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue as far as adjustments were on the offensive side of the ball. Well, I mean, we've seen some on the defensive side, but I think it was more on the offense. And I agree with Shotgun. That should be fixed or somewhat fixed.
We have a question on Facebook from OJ Mo. He says, "Are tight ends underutilized in the air raid offense?"
It's hard to say based on spring. If you're talking about USC's USC's tight ends in this offense, it's hard to say because basically it's been Eric Cromanhook. That's it. You've had one tight end that's been healthy the whole time. Yeah. Josh Follow has been in and out. Daniel Morabebe obviously is not practicing at all. Jude Wolfe has been shut down because of a back injury for the last 2.5 weeks, I want to say. So it's basically one guy. Now, if you want to look in the past, there have been air raid offenses that have utilized the tight end very effectively. You look at Cliff Kingsbury, his first year at Texas Tech, Jace Amaro won the Mackey Award as the best tight end in the country, caught over 100 balls. Because they split him out. They knew it was a matchup problem. They found ways to utilize him and get him in situations where he was matched up against a linebacker or matched up against a safety and utilize those different ways. That's what this offense is about, is creating mismatches. Now, some of it is just mismatches as far as covering all the space because they're trying to spread you out. Can you cover the entire width of the field? But also it's getting this guy against that guy. Whether it be getting Michael Pittman, using him as an inside receiver and getting him against a linebacker or a safety coming down or a nickelback who's a little bit smaller. Those type of things, that's what you're trying to do with this offense.
Yeah. I think you're going to see, especially if you get a guy like Josh Follow healthy, he's a mismatch guy. So you'll see him out there. I think They like to use a lot of wide receivers in this offense, and the tight ends are going to be used as part of that group. With it not being that deep, I think it's going to help the tight end group because there's some good tight ends in there. I think they'll all be in the mix.
And JT Daniels told me that Graham Harrell said that at North Texas he was running this offense with 20 wide receivers. They have 7. That's what JT said. He said, and he told me, he said it's a gift and a curse because it's a blessing and a curse when you look at it because it's gotten Pittman, Amon, Tyler, John Jackson, all the receivers and tight ends that much better because now they're in better shape than I can ever imagine they have been. But the entire group has gotten so many reps, but they're probably dead right now, he said. He said, I'm sure their bodies are dead. It's a good thing, but it's a bad thing. So once you get to the season, you're not going to have, the 6 or 7 guy rotation all the time. I think you're going to use more tight ends, and especially a guy like Josh Follow that can split out. You're going to use him as a receiver in that spread offense. And so I think that they'll have their opportunities to make plays if they can make them.
Yeah.
So we are reaching almost
probably.
the hour and a half mark. Let's go into rapid fire mode. If we will, we actually have a tweet from El Jaeger. He says, looking at the first half of the schedule, USC needs to hit the ground running or the season could be lost early. He says, do you think Swan would be allowed to fire Clay mid-season? Also, is there a typical time of the year it makes most sense to fire an AD? So some spicy questions.
Wow, very spicy tweet.
My guess on firing an AD, if you want to go to that one, is in the summer because you don't have anything going on.
Yeah.
That would be the best one.
And I think, Kara Fult's coming in July 1st, so we'll see if she's going to make a move early. I don't know.
Doubt that, but that would probably be the best time just because you don't have any sports going on. Baseball is the longest sport, and it goes to the end of June. So if you were to do something in July, so if she wanted to get on the job and make a change, that would technically be the best time, I would think.
Yeah.
With the other part of the question, what was the other part? Oh, would he be given the power to make a move? I'm sure he would. I mean, they've made in-season firing before. So.
USC's no stranger to firing mid-season. And I've been saying all along, for whatever reason, last year he did not want to get rid of Clay Helton. My gut feeling is all bets are off now, so he could do it at any time. So if it's the first 6 games of the season are very difficult, and if USC starts out 2-4, I would not be shocked if there was a change made. But, if they're 4-2, then no. I don't think something like that's going to happen. But if it's a pretty rough start, and that means a lot of things are going wrong for, because they're talented teams they're playing, but USC's still more talented, I think, than all of them. I think it's going to be difficult. So we'll see. But, yeah, I think there could be something happening if things are pretty bad at the halfway point.
We have a question from John that's specifically for Shotgun. He says, how does the air raid differ from Spurrier's fun and shoot offense from the 90s?
Oh, that's hard for me to say just because I have not watched. I try not to watch Spurrier tape because it's a silent tear from my youth of growing up a Georgia fan, and Spurrier just whooped up on them. I think the differences there are kind of the concepts of what you're trying to get out of each play. I think Spurrier, a lot of deep balls in that offense. They would really attack you deep and wide at the same time, whereas this is going to try to hit those intermediate routes a lot more, a lot of short routes, quick, get the ball out of the hand of the quarterback really quickly. So I think it's more of a difference there. I would have to look at like the running games and stuff and study up on Spurrier's because since he's been out of the game for a minute or not. Yeah. Unless you want me to look up some AAF footage from
Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Rest in peace, AAF. I don't think they spread it out as much more. I think the splits were tight. I don't think you had like these wide. But I'm not super familiar with it. I have to go back and look. But this, off the top of my head, that's what I thought.
I'll put it on in my notes.
To-do list.
I don't know. I'm not going to say a to-do list, but to potentially look at if I have free time.
All right. Thanks, John.
We have a question from Josh who says, what are the chances that the O-line will be much improved this year under the new offensive system?
I think it's a pretty good chance. Like, just if you look at overall production of the offensive line, I don't think it's going to be as talented as a group as last year, but I think that you could be more productive because the coaching is going to be better and the overall scheme is going to be better.
I'm curious. Their pass blocking was fine last year. They rated pretty well for pass blocking after, say, the Stanford game when JT got beat up. But they didn't run the ball consistently. So the question is, now that you're spreading people out and you're trying to get them to match up with you on the outsides to create more space, are they going to be able to run the ball? So if they can run the ball, then definitely. But I got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
And
Fair.
they haven't really run the ball really well this spring, but also it's been tough.
Hard
when,
to really
when you
tell.
have,
Yeah.
I'm going to do some rapid fire on YouTube. Jasper Smith says, looking back, do you guys wish USC landed Najee Harris over Carr?
I love Najee Harris, but I also love Stephen Carr. But I love Najee Harris because he never celebrated his own scores or anything. But I went to one of his games. He was out in the fourth quarter. They were up by 40 or 50 points. His shoes were off. Like he's standing in his socks, and he got so excited about a freshman running back picking up a first down. He just jumping up and down on the sideline. His dreads jumping up and down. But he scored like 3 touchdowns in the game. He just tossed the ball to the ref. And, like, people are trying to congratulate him and stuff, and he just, like, shrugs it off and keeps going.
Nice.
Like it's nothing. So I loved that about him. He's an interesting character. So I would love for him to come as well. But I've grown up watching – I feel like I've grown up watching Stephen Carr as a wide receiver at 7-on-7 things. It's so much fun.
Yeah. But, I mean, both guys are great. I think Stephen Carr fits the air raid better than Najee Harris. But both, I mean, those are like – you can't go wrong with either one of those guys.
LDR says, is John Jackson III and Devin Williams going to have a better chance of seeing more of the field this year?
Yes, because they will rotate more guys there. I mean, like JT said from Graham that he used 20 receivers at North Texas. They're going to use more guys, so those guys will have opportunities if they produce.
Yeah. John Jackson's going to be helped a lot by what he's done this spring, and he'll get paid dividends in the fall.
Thanos 2 says, if USC played Clemson today, what would the score be?
A lot to a little.
There's very little depth in the back end for USC and at certain other positions. I mean, I know Clemson lost a lot of defensive linemen and stuff to the draft and whatnot, but I think you would take the national champions over a team that went 5-7.
Yeah, USC made some coaching improvements. They're going to be better. They can compete and win the Pac-12 South. They are not to the Clemson level yet, so no.
Donnell asked what USC player will go first in the draft this year.
Who is it? So let me look real quick. So Pittman is a candidate.
Oh, I'm talking about the draft is coming up in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Marvel Tell.
Oh
yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Maybe Porter.
I think Chuma Adoga. I think he is
I
definitely raised his draft
Chuma.
stock.
That's the one I was
in the
going to say.
Senior Bowl. Oh yeah, now
No,
you
but I've
guys.
said
We all are like,
yeah.
I've said that before on the show.
Sure.
Like, I was thinking. I don't know why I was
Check
thinking about the
tapes.
current team.
I forgot who was eligible. Scott says, do you see any real chance that anybody but JT is QB1 coming opening weekend?
Yeah, I think there's a chance.
Real chance. I don't think it's
know.
going to happen, but I think that's significant chance.
Another reason why you should listen to the Family Feud podcast. Keely and I
Plug.
Way too many plugs.
brought up a debate maybe, about Graham Harrell's talk of leadership and how important leadership is to his quarterbacks, and whether leadership might play a big factor in choosing a quarterback, and whether that might set one of the other guys apart from JT Daniels or not.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast and find out.
Yeah. But it's rapid fire, so we don't want to talk about the podcast.
Yes, it's rapid fire. Let's see. Future Hendricks says, is Amon Ra going to be the number one option this year?
I would think so.
I don't know.
As far as most catches, I would go with that.
I don't know if he'll get most catches, but I don't think there's going to be it's not going to be like a Marquise Lee thing where you just throw it to him every time. It's going to be spread out all over the place. So,
and he's going to be open a lot of the time.
He might end up with the most catches, but I think Pittman or Vaughn's, any one of them could.
John asked Marquise Stepp's having a great spring. He lost weight, working on his catching skills, runs with power, appears to be much faster. Do you think he's going to be a casualty of Helton's favoritism?
Marquise Stepp?
Yeah.
No, just because Clay Helton talked about Marquise Stepp halfway through spring camp and said he's not there yet as a complete back. So the fact that Helton's willing to say that right now is I don't think that he will turn into suddenly the love of Helton's life.
Yeah.
And also running backs rotate more, though.
True.
So I don't think it's just favoritism. I think he'll get opportunities.
LDR says, do you guys see the D-line and O-line going after each other? Is there real competition in practice? An iron sharpens iron look.
I don't think there's been any fights yet. There's been one, maybe skirmish that was broken up really quickly. That's that I can think of.
Is that the standard that you're
I mean, if you're going after, I think it just seems like more emotion and, I think part of it might be the defensive line has won more than the offensive line, and it's kind of expected now. There's a couple guys in the offensive line that are going to win all their one-on-ones. the defensive line is going to dominate everybody
In general,
else.
the defense is winning. But yeah, I think it's been good competition. But yeah, like Shaka said, I don't think there's been a lot of fights or anything.
Yeah.
Corey, is 9-3 an acceptable expectation after that impressive showcase? I don't know if that was sarcasm or not.
I think
That's-
that's probably reasonable expectations.
I'm not as worried about the record as the result. Like I think you have to win the South. Like that's not winning the South is unacceptable. I think at this point.
I'll go
So
with that.
and then does Lynn Swan expect you to win the whole thing? Some USC fans do. Like 5-7, it doesn't mean you could get a year of 7-5 after that. It means like you had way too much talent to be 5-7. You have to improve a lot next year.
I'm seeing some questions. So if you are just like a tunnel vision specific person, we are part of USCfootball.com. We have a podcast network called the Peristyle Podcast. Ryan has been doing it for 12 years now. Shaka and I piggybacked onto that and have our own podcast called the Family Feud Podcast. So you can check out all our podcasts at the Family Feud, or no, at the Peristyle Podcast. You can search it on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts, you will find our podcast. So there you have it.
There's peristylepodcast.com. We put them all up on there. And of course, USCfootball.com. That's why we do all this stuff. So that's the main place. So just type in USCfootball.com. Like, oh, that's all their stuff.
Oh, look, they work.
This is just like a part of it.
Yeah. SNS Production says, is John Jackson the third and is he another Deontay Burnett?
I mean, that is the guy that you would hope he's even said that he models his game after Deontay. They went to Sarah together. He's been kind of a mentor to John Jackson. Similar skill sets. I think Deontay was a little bit faster. John Jackson's doing a good job working towards that. And I think that Deontay's had some of the best hands that I've seen. So
yeah.
But John Jackson is similar. Like he's a guy that when watching 7-on-7, you're like, man, he just catches everything.
Yep.
He didn't always have a huge window or nothing, but you're like, oh, he's open and he catches everything. And that's similar to the style of Deontay, I would say.
Yeah, I think he has a chip on his shoulder, too. You have to come in a gray shirt. Deontay had to come in a blue shirt. Like that, it's a little bit of motivation factor.
Good comp.
I just want a green shirt or something.
Yeah. Gerald on Facebook says, will Harold be in the box calling plays, or will he be on the field?
I would assume he's going to be up in the box since he spends half his practice there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the spring showcase, he went up I've never seen anyone do this, go up to the top of the track tower. So,
yeah.
all right.
Know that you could get up there. But
yeah, him and Kerry Colbert went up there. It was pretty funny.
Ricky said, can't they bring in a few JUCO DBs? I mean, they're bringing in Jalen Watson, but there's not really any of those JUCO DBs available to bring in the fall, if that's what you're asking. They could bring some in the future, but there's a lot of talent in Southern California as far as DBs. Guys like Elias Ricks committed to LSU right now, but is a USC legacy, so you're going to try to get him back. Clark Phillips, another top 30 guy that USC just recently offered, who's that USC is high on his list now. So yeah, there is some talent in Southern California that you can go after as well.
And a bunch of DBs are on their way, so
true.
They're coming in.
Speaking of which, Gerald on Facebook says, due to the lack of secondary players, do you see Clancy Pendergast only rushing 3 or 4 or taking chances and blitzing a lot?
Supposed to be more aggressive. That's what everyone's been saying. So we'll see. I think they might blitz more.
And even when like Jack Jones was out there as a true sophomore or redshirt freshman, whatever he was, his second season when he played just a little bit his freshman year, they still sent the house a lot. Now, does he have his confidence as many people? We'll see.
Ricky A. Reed says, has there been any noticeable changes with the staff's recruiting strategy / approach towards SEC country?
Well, they're attacking Texas more.
Yeah,
Mike Jinks has inroads there.
Graham Harrell,
obviously. So they're attacking that more. Not necessarily SEC country though. There has been some offers, but not like any noticeable difference.
It's very difficult when you're 5-7 to go across country and say, "Hey, you want to come to USC?" You have to after you win the Rose Bowl, you can go on there and knock on a lot of doors and make some calls. But it's just harder to do that now. But Graham Harrell and Jinks have connections into Texas, so that's still somewhat easier to do, but you got to pick and choose, and it's just really hard to do that when you have a 5-7 record hanging over your head.
If you go outside of your normal recruiting base, it's usually because someone has connections. Remember when Kenoto Hudson was on the staff, they went to Florida more often. There's no one really on the staff that has those outside connections right now.
SC Slot Guy on YouTube has a great question. He says, I have a question for the YouTube watchers. Do 90% of you really not know how to use the like button? Great question.
Hit some likes at the end. Go like.
YouTube, Facebook, hit some likes.
He had a comment earlier as
Subscribe.
well, SC Slot Guy. Can't believe SC has to practice at a small park basically to make it seem like the stands are packed with fans, talking about the spring showcase.
Yeah.
That's the West Coast. Like, you're not getting 80,000 people for a spring showcase game.
And the stadium's under renovations right now, so
Exactly.
give them a little bit of a break. You can see behind Keely that's being renovated. That's a live view.
As we speak, yeah, even with the wrinkles in it. Josh says, any chances USC fools anyone in the Pac-12 with this new system?
Fools?
Mike Leach has done it. Nice
Jinx car?
coordination, guys.
Jinx car, you owe me a car now.
Car?
I don't.
Coke. Not
No,
a Coke.
I'm up in the antes. I don't think it's going to fool anyone because Mike Leach has been running it. Because
Yeah.
there's been other programs running it. I don't think it fools them, but you can still beat them with it.
You're gonna score a lot more points. It's going to be more like if you're a USC fan, this will be more fun to watch this year than what you saw the last couple of years. So it will be more fun.
Also, the objective of this offense is not to fool people. So,
Yeah, we're gonna run this and we're gonna
Yeah.
do it better than you can stop us.
yeah.
If you call it fully like just putting people in good spots where it's really hard for a defense to cover all of them, and then the quarterback being smart enough to figure out which one they didn't cover and get them the ball and move the ball efficiently down the field. If that's fooling, then yes, you'll see that.
Jose Padilla has a strong statement, not a question, but if Drake Jackson doesn't start day one, both Helton and Clancy need to be fired.
That seems fair.
That does not seem fair.
I'm just kidding.
Who are you replacing him with? I mean, whose spot is he taking?
Yeah.
That becomes the question because the guys the spots he would be filling are either Christian Rectors or Jay Tufeles, I would guess.
Yeah.
Now, if you say, hey, we got to create the defense differently and find a spot for him, maybe. But if you're just taking one of those guys out, I'm going to say that he's going to start behind. I mean, he's going to be behind either one of those two guys if it's those two.
It's OKG had a couple of things. He thinks Daniel Meterbebe, getting him healthy would be huge. NFL talent, I agree. We just haven't seen him, so you can't really. I don't want to put any thought into it but he also says, any chance we got a lot of these on Periscope too. Any chance Fink or Sears transfers once JT is named QB1? A lot of people or anybody there's a lot of talk about anybody transferring. Will 4 quarterbacks be on the roster in the fall?
Keely?
Keaton Slovis knew what he was getting into when he signed with USC, so I think yes for Keaton.
Yes for transferring is what you're saying?
No for transferring. Sorry, answered it wrong. As far as JT Daniels, assuming he gets a spot, no, he will not be a transfer. It really depends when it comes down to Matt Fink and Jack Sears is what they want out of their their eligibility. Do they want to just have a college experience? Do they just want to be at USC? Is there availability for them to go somewhere? Is it maybe with Jack Sears? Does he still have connections with Duke? Would there be an opening position for him? Or are these guys just okay with being at USC, being backups, and that's kind of it for their football career? It really depends on them and what they want going forward. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say. But, we saw both. Matt Fink would have started if he didn't get hurt last year, and Jack Sears ended up getting. We thought Jack Sears was better than Fink coming out, and he ended up being the third guy. Now that there's 4, and Slovis has looked pretty good, who knows? It depends where they get ranked. If you're the backup, you're probably less likely to transfer. If Jack Sears or Matt Fink are 4th or something, then maybe it's more likely they transfer.
And also depends where they are academically, because if you can grad transfer and you don't have to sit out and you can go somewhere, and like Keely was saying, if you can find a place where you'll be the starter, more than likely, then you're going to do that. Whereas if you're the younger guy like Slovis and you have to transfer and you have to sit out a year and then try to battle for a position, it's much different. So I think it depends on their academic standing, and again, like Keely said, what they're trying to get out of college. If they think they're an NFL player, then yeah, they're going to go somewhere so they can play and get that film on tape rather than sitting on the bench behind somebody and hoping that you get an opportunity late in games or someone gets hurt.
All right. We should probably wrap it up, huh?
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up. I'm sorry to the final questions that were trickling in that we're not getting to. A Dog's Life in Portland says, was last year's lack of identity a problem of the players or an issue of confused offensive coaching philosophy?
Both?
Yeah, both. It was definitely a problem. It just wasn't well run. It wasn't this well-oiled machine that it needed to be.
And wasn't the leadership on the player side either, I don't think, especially offensively,
Yeah.
for it to be successful.
Alrighty.
Wait, one more HR picking stuff. He said the roster is set for 4 D linemen. Will Clancy do it? No, he would try and fit square pegs in round holes again. except they're going to a 4-down lineman set. So I'm confused.
I think the question would be, do you want to get away from the nickel a little bit because you have so much talent in the front seven? Would you rather do something like that? But I feel like they are going to put 4-down linemen, or more look like more of a 4-man front, so it's more of like a 4-2-5. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they end up rolling out there. Clancy does some different things. He does what he wants. So
He does what he wants.
That's all I'm trying to get out of this job, too.
Okay. Alrighty. That's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching, sending us your questions, and calling in. Thanks for the plethora of calls we got today.
Awesome calls.
Very fun talking to you
International
guys.
call.
International calls. Look at us. We'll be back next week on Wednesday giving a whole wrap-up of spring camp. It'll be over at that point, heading into a long off-season. But we'll be here getting you guys caught up on everything USC football. But that's Ryan Abraham. That is Shotgun Spratling. I'm Keely Eure. We will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.